We would like to welcome everyone to the 2016 Ballot Measures Town Hall meeting. This Town Hall meeting is sponsored by the Arizona Secretary of State office, with the Secretary of State being Michelle Reagan. My name is Renata Fisher. I will be here to present in a neutral manner. The Secretary of State's office will not take a position for or against any of the propositions. Today we will discuss Proposition 206, which is the Fair Wages and Healthy Families Act. We will also discuss Proposition 205, which is the Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. We will begin our discussion today with Proposition 206, which is the Fair Wages and Healthy Families Act. We want to make sure that each proposition has enough time to be talked about, explained, if there are any questions or comments. And so that's why we're starting with Proposition 206, because it seems like there's a lot more feeling and emotion involved with Proposition 205. So we want to make sure that each proposition is explained, of course, in an equal amount of time. Regarding Proposition 206, Proposition 206 will increase the minimum wage if passed, as well as it will create an earned paid sick time. Currently, the minimum wage is $8.05 an hour. If Proposition 206 passes, beginning January 1st, 2017, minimum wage will be increased to $10 an hour. After that, there will be incremental increases until January 1st, 2020, in which the minimum wage will be increased to $12 an hour. And after that, beginning January 1st, 2021, the minimum wage will be increased based on the cost of living as it is now. With the creation of earned paid sick time, employees will be able to earn a minimum of 1 hour per every 30 hours worked. If an employer has 15 or more employees, employees will be able to accrue or earn up to 40 hours per year. If an employer has less than 15 employees, employees will be able to accrue or earn up to 24 hours of earned paid sick time per year. So what happens to the unused earned paid sick time? Of course, it may be carried over to the next year, but there will be limitations based on the amount of employees not being able to earn or accrue more than 40 hours or 24 hours, depending on the number of employees an employer may have. Employers also will have the option of paying the employees at the end of the year for any unused earned paid sick time, but of course it will be at the employer's discretion. However, employees who may resign, if they're terminated or even separated from employment, employers do not have any type of obligation to pay or reimburse their employees for any unused earned paid sick time. Now, with the earned paid sick time, employees may use the time for himself or herself. Employees may also use the time to care for a sick relative, such as a spouse, a child, a grandparent, or parent, or even a sibling. Some of the reasons an employee may use earned paid sick time for physical or a mental illness, or if the employee or a family member is a victim of domestic violence, sexual violence, stalking, or abuse. Proposition 206 does address if an employee is absent 3 or more consecutive days, in which an employer, at his or her discretion, may require reasonable documentation from the employee, which could be something as simple as a doctor's note. As for employers, employers cannot retaliate or discriminate against employees for asserting a right or a claim under Proposition 206. Employers will be required to pay the minimum wage as well as earned paid sick time, and if not, the employers may be subject to penalties if a violation occurs. So who will be exempt from this law? Currently, with the minimum wage law now, the government, which is state and federal government, certain small businesses, along with labor unions. But however, with labor unions, they will be only exempt from the earned paid sick time. At this time, we have invited a proponent from the campaign to speak on behalf of Proposition 206, and we've also invited a group in opposition to Proposition 206 to speak on its behalf, to speak against Proposition 206. But today we only have someone from the campaign to speak in favor of Proposition 206, and I will let him have the floor now.
Thank you. My name is Michael Romero. I'm a staffer with the Prop 206 initiative. And today I came to speak on behalf of the proposition and the benefits that the initiative will bring to the state of Arizona. Personally, Prop 206 really attracted me, and it really motivated me to continue doing the work that I'm doing right now. I'm a recent college graduate from the University of Arizona. I worked a minimum wage job for 2.5 years while I was a student there. And I was a full-time student, worked about 30 hours a week. And as a student working minimum wage, it's tough. You know, I was able to do it. I was in a position where luckily my school was paid off. But even working minimum wage, having my school paid off, there's times where I could, you know, barely just pay my rent, where groceries were tough to come by. Gasoline wasn't a thing that I could easily afford, so I had to, you know, take a walk to school or skate to school. So Prop 206 definitely calls my attention, but just like me, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across the state who are in the same position as I am. If you go and think about it, everyone knows someone who will be directly affected by the Prop 206 initiative. Whether you know someone who's working a minimum wage job or who works for a business that doesn't provide earned sick days, Prop 206 goes out and it affects the state of Arizona. And one thing that we're really proud of is that we have the support of small businesses from across the state, from small businesses in rural communities to businesses out in Tucson and Flagstaff and Phoenix. We take pride in that. We worked with them when we first started drafting the language for this initiative. We were able to come to terms that $12 was what these small businesses felt that they could pay their employees. And we take pride. You know, we already see a lot of these small businesses paying their employees above the minimum wage, and in some cases also providing earned sick time, and we take pride in that. And excuse me. And yeah, so this initiative does benefit small businesses. It makes the competition between small businesses and larger corporations a lot fair, since companies like Walmart, Target, they are allowed to, you know, they pay their employees at a minimum wage, when smaller locally owned businesses may pay their employees well above the minimum wage. It allows our small businesses and companies like Walmart, like Target, to be on a level playing field where Walmart isn't undercutting wages when small businesses are competing with them. And we have perfect examples that if you go to our website, you can find examples of business owners who have testified and say that they're proud to support the initiative. Businesses such as Changing Hands, they compete with the likes of Amazon.com. They're a local bookstore, and they provide earned sick time to their employees. They pay well above the minimum wage, but they've been in business for a few decades in the city of Arizona, city of Phoenix, and they are the example that goes to show that they can, that this initiative will work, that it's not going to hurt our economy. As employees have enough money, you know, they earn enough money, the extra money, they can use it to put it back into our economies. They have enough money to go out to dinner, they can go out to the movies, they can buy extra clothes, and that money just gets circulated right back into our economy, and it just boosts the level of the economic activity across the state. That's all I have to say for now, and if anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Thank you. We don't have anyone here to speak in opposition to Proposition 206, so we will move right along to Proposition 205, which is the Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. If Proposition 205 passes, it will legalize the recreational use or personal use of marijuana for consumers or persons 21 and older. It will also create a Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control along with the Marijuana Fund. If marijuana is legalized in the state with the passage of Proposition 205, consumers or persons 21 and older would be able to possess, use, purchase, or transport up to 1 ounce of marijuana or up to 5 grams of concentrated marijuana. Consumers would also be able to possess, transport, and grow up to 6 plants at their personal residence, and they will also be able to possess any marijuana that's yielded from those plants grown at their personal residence. Now, there is an exception. For example, if a household has 3 adults who are 21 and older, they will be limited to grow no more than 12 plants produced at a personal residence. Also, with Proposition 205, a person 21 and older would be able to transfer up to 1 ounce of marijuana to someone else who's at least 21 and over. So let's discuss some of the prohibited acts that will continue to remain illegal, even if Proposition 205 passes. It will still remain illegal to operate a vehicle while impaired, for example, and also it will still remain illegal to knowingly sell, give, transfer, or provide marijuana to someone who's under the age of 21. And it will continue to remain illegal to use or possess marijuana inside or on school grounds. You will not be able to possess or use marijuana during an off-campus sponsored event, in a school bus, or even in your own personal vehicle on school grounds, for example. Proposition 205 does provide for six petty offenses along with 1 Class 3 misdemeanor and 1 Class 6 felony. Some of the examples of the petty offenses would include if a person is caught possessing more than 1 ounce of marijuana, but less than 2.5 ounces. Also, if a person who's under the age of 21 attempts to solicit another person to purchase marijuana on his or her behalf. Those are some of the examples of a petty offense. Now we will discuss some of the effects on third parties. As for employers, employers are not required to allow the possession or consumption of marijuana or marijuana products in the workplace. Employers will also have the discretion and the ability to create policies or enact policies to restrict the consumption of marijuana or marijuana products by their employees, whether the employee is at home or at work. They will continue to have that right to enforce workplace policies. Now, what happens to a person who may own, manage, or lease property? A person, they will have the right to prohibit and regulate people from smoking, processing, manufacturing, along with selling marijuana on the premises. However, they would not be able to prohibit or stop someone from possessing or even consuming marijuana or a marijuana product on the premises. Now, there is an exception to that. If the building is publicly owned by the state or a political subdivision of the state, or if that person is subject to lose some type of monetary benefit or a license benefit that's provided from the federal government. Because remember, even if Proposition 205 passes, it will still remain, marijuana is still illegal under federal law. As for parental rights, a parent may not be denied, for example, custody, visitation, or even parenting time, and they may not be automatically presumed guilty of neglect or even child endangerment just because they are engaging in an illegal act that's prescribed under Proposition 205 if Proposition 205 passes. However, of course, there is an exception. If that parent's behavior is deemed not in the best interest of the child, then he or she may possibly be denied custody, visitation, or parenting time, but however, it will be determined by a judge. As for local control, localities will have the ability to enact reasonable ordinances along with rules. They also will have the ability to place reasonable restrictions on public signs. They will have the ability to limit, they will have limited ability regarding zoning issues. For example, if there's already a nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary zoned in a particular area, the locality may not have the ability to stop a marijuana retailer from establishing a business within that same zoning area if there's already a nonprofit medical marijuana dispensary already zoned for that particular area. Again, Proposition 205 will create a Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control, a marijuana fund. Along with it will also create marijuana law enforcement officers. The newly created Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control will consist of a director and a 7-member marijuana commission. The director and the 7-member marijuana commission will be appointed by the governor. The director cannot have any type of financial interest within a marijuana establishment. And 4 of the 7-member marijuana commission, they will not be able to have any type of financial interest within a marijuana establishment as well. The remaining 3 members of the 7-member marijuana commission will be required to have at minimum a 10% voting and or financial interest within a marijuana establishment. The newly created Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control will have the authority to amend, adopt, and enforce rules. The Act provides for basic guidelines of authority for the newly created department. However, it does leave the department with discretion. Regarding regulatory subjects, the department will have to address marketing and advertising restrictions so that the marijuana and marijuana products do not appeal to children. They will also have to address packaging requirements to ensure that the packaging of marijuana along with the products are child resistant. They will also have to address labeling requirements in which they will have to provide warning labels. They will have to provide the amount of THC that is provided in the product or the marijuana. They will also need to provide serving sizes as well. They will also need to address how to prevent sales to persons who are under the age of 21 years old. And along with, they will have to issue, renew, along with revoke licenses. So how will the department be funded? Initially, it will be funded by the Medical Marijuana Fund. According to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee's fiscal impact statement, they reference the Department of Health Services, in which the Department of Health Services states by the end of fiscal year 2017, the Medical Marijuana Fund will have approximately $15.4 million, in which it will be transferred over to the Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control to help fund it initially. With the newly created marijuana fund, it will continue to be funded by the 15% retail tax on the marijuana, along with application license fees, fines, and civil penalties. So, what will the marijuana fund pay for and or fund? Initially, of course, it will need to fund and pay for the Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control. It will also be responsible for paying the Department of Revenue for the administration and enforcement of the 15% retail tax. It will also have to repay the Medical Marijuana Fund, in which it initially receives its funds to fund the Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control. And then next, 50% of all license fees collected will go to the localities where a marijuana establishment is located, and that will happen quarterly. And then also quarterly, the excess money after administration and enforcement and implementation, 40% will go to fund K through 12 education, an additional 40% will go to fund full day kindergarten, and the remaining 20% will go to fund public health education, to educate the public on the dangers of alcohol, marijuana, along with other substances. So when will consumers be able to begin purchasing marijuana? Consumers would be able to purchase marijuana beginning March 1st, 2018. Now, what will happen to the existing medical marijuana law? The law will continue to remain in effect. However, the authority will transfer from the Department of Health Services to the newly created Department of Marijuana Licenses and Control. At this time, again, we have invited someone from Proposition 205 campaign to speak in favor of Proposition 205, but at this time we don't have anyone here. But however, we've also invited someone who's in opposition of Proposition 205 to speak on behalf of their committee. And so you have the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob DeVries, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak in regards to opposition to Proposition 205. I have a very strong belief in regards to that. And what I'd like to touch on initially is what 205 actually will do. Prop 205 actually creates 20 pages of new laws in the state of Arizona. And as it was mentioned, what it will do, if passed, is it provides a statutory right to use, possess, and grow. That's a statutory right that will be in place and constitutionally protected. The only way we can make any changes, should this proposition pass, is to further the purpose of the law. That means nothing can be done to address any unintended consequences that may have occurred, and would be very difficult to make any amendments unless there is a benefit to the cause. We talked about what it would legalize and the amount it would legalize within the new laws. One of the things that has not necessarily been that well advertised is currently there is no per se for marijuana. Per se would be considered like a blood alcohol count for individuals that have consumed too much alcohol and driven upon the highways. There is not a per se that's established right now for marijuana. The difficulty is Prop 205 prohibits us from establishing a per se legal limit. And I guess I would question, why would we want to tie the hands of those that are trying to protect us on the highways and the streets by not establishing a legal limit that could be put into place? It was touched on a little bit, but what Prop 205 will also do, as it mentions, is landlords, property owners, those who have rental property, lose property rights. They no longer have full control over that property because statutorily they cannot ban an individual from possessing or consuming on their property. One of the things that also has not been mentioned but is contained in 205 is that by the year 2020, it will actually allow for delivery of marijuana to private residences. Much like you get pizza delivered today, you could call up and have your marijuana delivered, and you can imagine, only imagine the type of violations that could occur in those types of situations. I guess when we look at 205, and many times we try to look to our past and mistakes made as to moving forward, and that's what I would like us to do, is to take a look. What has truly happened in Colorado since they legalized marijuana? In the in the city of Denver alone, there are currently 370 marijuana stores, retail stores available for purchase. That is more than McDonald's, Starbucks, and 7-Eleven combined within the city limits of Denver. It's a significant impact for them. What we have seen, and I think confuses many people as well, is, well, this is the marijuana of the 60s and 70s. It's far from that. The THC level of marijuana in the 60s, 70s, 80s was in the 3 to 4 percentile range. Nationally, the THC level is around 14. Currently, in Colorado, they've been able to genetically alter the marijuana to the point of achieving THC levels well above 0.20. They've gone even further than that with extracting the oils and the concentrates that they're now able to achieve upwards of 80% THC concentrate. And that's the biggest concern. When we look across the country, and remember we talked about per se being prohibited, traffic crashes, marijuana-related traffic crashes that are fatal have doubled in the Colorado area. These are things that are of concern to us. Additionally, we talk about our youth and the things our future. What we're seeing right now in Colorado is they have a 74% higher usage rate amongst the youth. College is almost double compared to the national average in regards to college usage. One thing that's of concern, especially in rural communities, is what is happening in our hospital environments. Our hospital here in Kingman actually encounters approximately 53 patients per year in the emergency room department. Because of that, they're going through a significant expansion. What they haven't factored in is what occurs if Prop 205 passes. Because since the legalization of marijuana in Colorado, emergency room visits alone have increased 19%. And I had to ask our hospital staff, are you prepared to take on an additional 10,000 patients a year? And they are just not ready to take that on. More concerning yet, again, we go back to our youth, is what they're experiencing in Colorado is accidental overdose, accidental exposure to marijuana in the youth is up 600% in regards to poison control calls. That's a grave concern to everybody involved. One of the things as well that is of great concern that many people have not factored in, because over 40 to 45% of the medical marijuana or the legal marijuana that's used is in the edible format. Years ago, law enforcement implemented and mandated that investigators, when they went into a marijuana grow operation, had to have protective gear before they went in. That protective gear was to ensure that they were protected when they encountered the molds, the chemicals, the pesticides that are used in the grow operation. All of those materials, the molds, chemicals, and pesticides, are in those edibles because there is no FDA control. Marijuana is still banned on a federal level, thus there is no FDA control. So everything that we are protecting ourselves from a law enforcement standpoint and investigators is freely available to anyone to ingest, and is of grave concern as to what health risks that will bring today and well into the future. So when we look at it, I think it adds up to this is not a good situation for us. Scientific studies now have shown that repeated use of marijuana has lowered IQ. Why would we as a state want to intentionally dummy down our youth? Our youth is our future. Prop 205 is a step, but it's a step in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the Secretary of State's office definitely encourage everyone to be informed. We want to encourage everyone to go out on November 8th, which is Election Day, to go out and vote. Polling places will open at 6 a.m. and polling places and vote centers will close at 7 p.m. The Secretary of State's office would like to thank everyone for coming out today. And again, we encourage everyone to be informed, to gain the knowledge, so that way when you go out and vote on Propositions 205, 206, and other things this November, we want you to be informed. So thank you so much for taking time out for coming today.